Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Prabhajakarya Astotra Sattashi Shimad, His Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT founder Acharya, His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Prabhajakarya Stotra Sattashi Shimad, His Divine Grace, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnav Vrinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasati Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shama Kund Radha Kund Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Mayapur Dham Ki Jai. Yamuna Mai Ki Jai. Ganga Mai Ki Jai. Bhakti Devi Ki Jai, Tulasi Maharani Ki Jai, Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees.
Hare Krishna.
All glories to the assembled devotees.
Hare Krishna.
All glories to the assembled devotees.
Hare Krishna.
All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga.
Hare Hare.
Namo Vishnu Vidaya Krishna Vishaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Nityanamani. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shanmidati Pastudadesh Tarine. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Hare Krishna. Reading today from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, The Creation, Chapter 13, Dhritarashtra Quits Home, Text 43. Yata kridopaskaranam samyoga vigamaviha ichaya kriditu syatam tataive shikshayanrinam. Yata kridopaskaranam samyoga vigamaviha ichaya kriditu syatam tattaive shikshayanrinam. Yata kridopaskaranam samyoga vigamaviha ichaya kriditu syatam tataive shikshayanrinam. Everyone chant, please.
Hare Krishna. Yatha kridopaskaranam sanyog vigamaviha ikchaya kriditum syatam tataive sikshaya nidam. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yatha krido paskarana samyog vigamav iha ichaya kridituhu sayatam tathaiva sechaya nirinam. Hare Krishna.
Yatha kridopaskaranam samyoga vigamaviha ichaya kriditu syatam tathaive sechaya nrinam.
Word for word translation. Yata, as much as. Krida upaskaranam, playthings. Samyoga, union. Vigamao, disunion. Iha, in this world. Ichaya, by the will of. Kriditu, just to play a part. Syatam, takes place. Tata, so also. Eva, certainly. Isha, the Supreme Lord. Ichaya, by the will of. Nrinam, of the human beings. Translation. As a player sets up and disperses his playthings according to his own sweet will, so the supreme will of the Lord brings men together and separates them. Purport by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. We must know for certain that the particular position in which we are now set up is an arrangement of the supreme will in terms of our own acts in the past. The Supreme Lord is present as the localized Paramatma in the heart of every living being, as it is said in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 13, text 23. And therefore he knows everything of our activities in every stage of our lives. He rewards the reactions of our actions by placing us in some particular place. A rich man gets his son born with a silver spoon in his mouth, but the child who came as the rich man's son deserved such a place, and therefore he is placed there by the will of the Lord. And at a particular moment, when the child has to be removed from that place, he is also carried by the will of the Supreme, even if the child or the father does not wish to be separated from the happy relation. The same thing happens in the case of a poor man also. Neither rich man nor poor man has any control over such meetings or separations of living beings. The example of a player and his playthings should not be misunderstood. One may argue that since the Lord is bound to award the reactionary results of his own actions, the example of a player cannot be applied, but it is not so. We must always remember that the Lord is the supreme will and he is not bound by any law. Generally, the law of karma is that one is awarded the results of one's own actions, but in special cases, by the will of the Lord, such resultant actions are changed also. But this change can be effected by the will of the Lord only and no other. Therefore, the example of the player cited in this verse is quite appropriate, for the supreme will is absolutely free to do whatever he likes, and because he is all perfect, there is no mistake in any of his actions or reactions. These changes of resultant actions are especially rendered by the Lord when a pure devotee is involved. It is assured in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 9, text 30 and 31, that the Lord saves a pure devotee who is surrendered unto him without reservation from all sorts of reactions of sins, and there is no doubt about this. There are hundreds of examples of reactions changed by the Lord in the history of the world. If the Lord is able to change the reactions of one's past deeds, then certainly he is not himself bound by any action or reaction of his own deeds. He is perfect and transcendental to all laws. Yata kridopaskaranam samyoga vigama viha ichaya kriditu syatam tataive shekchayanrinam. As a player sets up and disperses his playthings according to his own sweet will, so the supreme will of the Lord brings men together and separates them. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pashtaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shanivadi Paschadade Shatarine. Hare Krishna. Good morning. Thank you to the relatively few people who are here. Thank you for your kind attendance. Before jumping into the subject of matter of the class and what I'm going to analyze, first let's look at the verses that Srila Prabhupada references in the purports, just so we have the a good context going in. For example, at the beginning of the purport, Prabhupada says, "The Supreme Lord is present as the localized Paramatma in the heart of every living being, as it is said in the Bhagavad Gita." And there are several verses he could have chosen to reference that, but this is the verse he chose, 13:23. Upadrashtanumanta cha Bharta Bhokta Maheshwara Paramatmeti Chapyukto Dehismin Purusham Para. Yet in this body there is another, a transcendental enjoyer, who is the Lord, the supreme as the overseer and permitter, and who is known as the super soul. So I think he particularly chose this verse because of this term upadrishta. Drishta, of course, we know means to see. Upadrishta means the overseer, the one who sees everything. So Krishna in the heart sees everything. That's relevant to Prabhupada's analysis. And the other one, the other Bhagavad Gita verses Prabhupada references, it is assured in the Bhagavad Gita 9:30 and 31 that the Lord saves a pure devotee who is surrendered unto him without reservation from all sorts of reactions of sins, and there is no doubt about this. Well known. Apichet sudaracharo bhajate mamananyabak sadoreva samantavya samyag vyavasito hisa Kshipram bhavati dharmatma shashvat shantim nigachati konteya pratijanihi name bhakta pranashyati. He quickly, even if one commits the most abominable actions, if he is engaged in devotional service, he is to be considered saintly because he is properly situated in his determination. He quickly becomes righteous and attains lasting peace. O son of Kunti, declare it boldly that my devotee never perishes. The overlord, the controller of everything. And one aspect of that is being referenced particularly in today's verse. It's continuing Narada Muni philosophical presentation specifically for the purpose of pacifying Yudhishthira Maharaj, sort of his heartfelt pain upon losing Dhritarashtra and Vidura and Gandhari. The point is that there is also the one who separates them. Samyoga and Samyoga, we know yoga means union or bringing together. Even in Sanskrit, it means addition, like in mathematics, yoga means addition. And Samyoga means Krishna is bringing people together. We're in a family. We have our father and we have our child and we have our husband and wife and our friends and our society. And he's brought us all together. And then material circumstances and ultimately death are separating them apart again. Samyoga, bring together. Vigama. Gama means to walk or to travel. Gamana means walking. And Vigama means walking away or traveling away. So he's bringing everyone together and he's again separating them. And this is to pacify Yudhishthira Maharaj, that it's not in our control. It's all according to the will of the Lord. He's brought you together, you with your brothers, the Pandavas, and with your uncles and your fathers and your friends and your relatives. And he's also separating them, Samyoga and Vigama. And in the previous verse, 2 verses ago, same point was made with different words, Samyunakti and Viyunakti, same thing. Krishna's bringing together and Krishna's bringing apart. And Yudhishthira, because Narada Muni is the most expert preacher, and because Yudhishthira is such an expert student, he understands this so well. And we could see in the coming chapter when the Pandavas retire and Yudhishthira and the Pandavas are all going up into the Himalayas, going up to the north. Last week or a couple of weeks ago, we heard about this idea of going to the north, that going to the north means renouncing and giving up everything, all attachments for the sake of spiritual life. And even his dear wife and all of his Pandava brothers were falling down and being left behind. And still, he learned the lesson so well. He was able to keep on marching, keep on progressing northward, leaving them all behind. So this is the lesson that Narada Muni is preaching to him. And why is all this happening? Icha. This word is twice in today's verse, Icha. Ichaya kridito siatam tataive shyechaya nrinam. So twice, Icha. Icha means will or desire. Long, long ago, when I went to Mauritius with my wife, she taught me this this Hindi expression, that apka icha. I don't know if that's in Mauritius or if it's common everywhere. Hindi expression. Just like if someone says, "Oh, what do you want to have for dinner? Do you want rice and dal, or do you want dal, or do you want khichdi?" And you say apka icha, according to your desire, up to your desire. So icha means desire, and everything is Krishna's apka icha, according to his desire. According to Krishna's desire, everything is happening, according to his icha. Isha ichaya, that's the exact Sanskrit. Tataiv ishechaya rinam. Tava, tata, eva, isha ichaya. Not just like my desire or your desire, but isha ichaya, the desire of the supreme will. So once we understand that it's all happening by the desire of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then what's the cause for lamentation at his separating us? Or for that matter, what's the cause of material joy at bringing us together? Because it's all simply happening according to the supreme will of the Personality of Godhead. And what is the comparison? In this verse, first line starts with yata, and fourth line starts with tata. So we've seen before, yata tata means as this is, so this is. If it means an analogy or a comparison of some sort is being set up. So what's the comparison? Yata kridos pakaranam. That just as someone, like a child, plays with its playthings. Like if a child has his, children used to like playing with little army soldiers, and the child will set them up and set up, here's this army and here's this army, and setting them all up. And then when he's done playing, just, sweeps it all away, throws it in his box. Or a child is playing with dolls. They want to have a tea party with their dolls, so set all the dolls up. You sit here, you sit here, you sit here, and set up the table and set up the little teacups. And a child can have their little game with the dolls and teacups and having a tea party. And they're done playing. Take all the dolls, throw them in the box, throw them on the shelf. Done. The playing is done. So this idea of playing is very interesting, that Krishna is setting up just like a child plays and brings his toys together, and then he's done playing and scattered. And this example is actually used many times in the scriptures about the Lord's will. Another example is during the story, we know the story of the Daksha Yagya, how Daksha was doing a sacrifice and he offended Lord Shiva and so much happened and he was cursed and he got his head chopped off and then he got a goat's head stuck back on. It's a whole story. But after it was all sort of resolved and the yagya was able to proceed properly, then because it was such a well done yagya, finally, Lord Vishnu himself appeared at that yagya. And when the Lord himself personally appeared, all the different sages and demigods and residents of this and that and the other heavenly planet all took turns offering very nice prayers to him. And when the Gandharva's turn came to pray to Lord Vishnu, they said, Krida bandam vishwam idam yasya vibhunam. That the same idea, you are so powerful. Yasya vibhunam means you're so full of potency. You're so much the absolute controller of everything that Krida bandam vishwam, this whole universe is just like your plaything that you're playing and manipulating as you like. One other example is the prayers of Mother Vindyavali. Now, I actually didn't know this until a couple of days ago when I was reading and studying for this class, but Vindyavali, we have in Philly, our Mother Vindyavali. Vindyavali is the name of Bali Maharaj's wife, which all of you may already know, but I didn't know until a couple of days ago. And she also prayed so beautifully to Lord Vamanadev, saying, Kridartam Atmana idam tri jagat kritam te. She said the same thing to the Supreme Lord, Kridartam, Krida, play, that this tri jagat kritam, these three worlds are simply all your playthings. So playthings, Prabhupada says in the purport, that Krishna is manipulating it like his playthings. Prabhupada says this should not be misunderstood. Sometimes amongst materialists or amongst atheists, there's this idea that, oh, if there's a God, he's just so cruel and whimsical that he's, propping up some people for no reason. Evil people are getting propped up and good people are getting destroyed. So they think that, yet God is playing with this universe like a cruel child, just whimsically playing and smashing things here and there. But Prabhupada says we should not misunderstand. He's playing with it in the sense being implied is that he's the supreme absolute controller. And just as the player can specifically manipulate each and every plaything and put it in its place, in the same way, Krishna is perfectly manipulating and ordering and arranging every aspect of the material energy and every aspect of we jivas' position and place and action and reaction within that material energy. It doesn't mean that he's cruel or careless about it. It means that he's the absolute controller. So we shouldn't, that means what Narada Muni is saying to Yudhishthira is don't try to second guess the plan of the Lord. He's bringing you together for a reason. He's separating you for a reason. Just like Queen Kunti also understood this and prayed like this. Naveda kaschit bhagavams chakirshitam taveha manasya nrinam vidambanam. No one understands the purpose of Krishna's coming to this world. Tave hamanasya nrinam vidambanam. He appears like an ordinary person, but he's completely transcendental, and therefore no one can understand the plan or the means of his coming. And when Prabhupada spoke about this verse, and it's included in the book Teachings of Queen Kunti, he explained this. This is from Teachings of Queen Kunti. He says, the real purpose of the Lord's pastimes is his free will. He thinks, let me go and see. He doesn't need to come to kill the demons. He has so many agents in the material nature that can kill them. For example, in a moment, he can kill thousands of demons merely by a strong wind. Nor does he need to come to give protection to his devotees, for he can do everything simply by his wills. But he descends to enjoy pleasure pastimes. Let me go and see. So this is another aspect of what it means that Krishna is playing. He's playing because it's a pleasure for him. He could do everything automatically without leaving the spiritual world, without even thinking about it. He has so many agents doing everything, but he wants to be involved for the sake of his parts and parcels, and even more specifically for the sake of his devotees. He wants to come and he enjoys in his relationship with them. Let me come and protect my devotees because it gives me pleasure to protect them, and it gives me pleasure to give them pleasure. Or let me come and fight with the demons because I get pleasure from it. It's a playtime, a plaything, a sport for him to come and fight with the demons. He enjoys it. So everything is absolutely within Krishna's will, and everything is absolutely within Krishna's pleasure, and everything is also absolutely within Krishna's plan for the benefit of every living entity. But understanding that is very difficult. We can accept it, but understanding it is difficult, as Queen Kunti says. Bhishmadev in his prayers, he also describes how difficult it is to understand, to actually understand the plan of the Lord. Nayasya karchid, nahyasya kahichid rajan, puman veda viditsitan, yad vidjigyasya yukta, muyanti kavayo pihi. Even kavayo, even big scholars, big sages are muyanti, are bewildered in trying to understand the plan of the Lord. Nayasya karhichid rajan. Also, he's speaking to Yudhishthira Rajan. So Yudhishthira has been getting this concept, this idea drummed into him over and over, that you can't understand the plan of the Lord. Ordinary persons can't understand. Even the most learned, even the greatest sages cannot understand the plan of the Lord. So that means we have to accept everything is resting on the control of the Lord and on the pleasure of the Lord. This is the lesson that Yudhishthira needs to learn both so that his heart can be pacified, and also he needs to learn it so he can do his duty, do his activities of ruling the kingdom and his activities of devotional service properly, without being disturbed, without being deviated. Another nice section where some of these points are discussed is a little bit later in the Bhagavatam, in the second canto. Again, Narada Muni. Narada Muni is so intelligent. He goes to speak to his father, Lord Brahma. And of course, Narada Muni knows who the Supreme Personality of Godhead is. But he approached Lord Brahma in a particular way that is very interesting and even a little humorous. He approaches Lord Brahma and he starts asking him, what's the nature of this world? What's the nature of how does everything happen? How is everything going on? And he starts praising Lord Brahma, his father, saying, oh, you're obviously the controller. You're a big controller. So you can tell me what's going on. This is from the second canto, chapter 5. I'll read a couple of verses. He says, my dear father, all of this is known to you scientifically, because whatever was created in the past, whatever will be created in the future, or whatever is being created at present, as well as everything within the universe, is within your grip. just like a walnut. So just like you could pick up a nut and hold it in your hand, actually the actual Sanskrit is amalaki. So amalaki means the Indian gooseberry. So just like, and Prabhupada for Western audience, he said just like a walnut. So just as you could hold a fruit or a nut in your hand and have it completely within your grasp. And we say this is ordinary English to say, if you grasp something, it means you understand it. It doesn't mean it doesn't only mean you physically grasp it, but if you have a good grasp of a subject, it means you understand it. So just as a person can hold a nut or an amalaki fruit within their hand, so Lord Brahma, literally and figuratively, is holding the whole universe in his hand. So therefore, he must have an understanding of everything. He goes on, my dear father, and now this is where Narada Muni is getting to the point he really wants to see. He says, my dear father, what is the source of your knowledge? Under whose protection are you standing? And under whom are you working? What is your real position? Do you alone create all entities with material elements by your personal energy? So here he's hinting by his questions that Lord Brahma, as powerfully as he is, may not be the actual supreme being, the independent being. He goes on, as the spider very easily creates the network of its cobweb and manifests its power of creation without being defeated by others, so also you yourself, by employment of your self-sufficient energy, create without any other's help. So is Lord Brahma actually creating without any other's help? And then he goes on, he says, yet we are moved to wonder about the existence of someone more powerful than you when we think of your great austerities in perfect discipline, although your good self is so powerful in the matter of creation. So Narada Muni is so intelligent that you seem to be an independent creator, but you are under someone else's power. You are under someone else's control, and you performed austerities to get the benediction of someone else. And then Lord Brahma finally answers, my dear boy Narada, being merciful to all, including me, you have asked all these questions because I have been inspired to see into the prowess of the almighty personality of Godhead. So very nicely, Narada Muni is bringing this out, and he's teaching the same thing here. No one is independent. Everyone is under the control of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So this is the understanding we have to have, that everything is under the control of Krishna. He's bringing everyone together. He's separating everyone apart. If we get something good, it's due to our karma, but given by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And if we get something bad, it's also due to our karma, but personally given by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And if we actually become devotees of some sort, and especially as we approach purer and purer levels of devotion, Krishna takes a personal hand in our lives, even superseding the laws of karma, as Prabhupada explains at some length in the purport. But yet understanding that everything is under Krishna's control because he's the controller, also because he's the enjoyer, that it's all meant for Krishna's pleasure, for Krishna's enjoyment. Everything he's doing gives him pleasure. And also for our benefit, he's doing, because we're his parts and parcels, he also wants to benefit us. So these three principles, this is what Srila Prabhupada called the peace formula. Bhoktaram yagya tapasam sarvaloka maheshram suridam sarvabhutanam. That Bhoktaram yagya tapasam, Krishna is the enjoyer of everything. Sarvaloka maheshram, Krishna is the controller of everything. And Suridam sarvabhutanam, Krishna is the well-wisher, the benefactor of all living beings. Gyatvam shaptam richati. And when you understand that, then you can attain peace. So this is the peace that Narada Muni is trying to give to Yudhishthira by preaching like this to him. So we need to understand this also. This Bhoktram Yagyatatmasam Sarvalokamahesham Suridam Sarvabhutanam. We need to understand this on the cosmic level, and we need to also understand it on a personal level within our own lives. How Krishna is enjoying, how Krishna is in control, and how Krishna is trying to benefit us, trying to help us, both on the cosmic level and on the individual level. Just like yesterday's verse, describing how everyone is being controlled just like a cow with a rope through its nose. So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur gives a very interesting explanation of that in his commentary. He says that the cowherd puts the rope through the nose of the cow to control it, and the cows, each individual cow is tied by a short rope. And then all of those short ropes of the cows, of many cows in a herd, those short ropes are all tied together and fastened to a long rope. And that long rope is there then under the control of the cowherd. And he explains that the analogy is that Krishna has this long rope, which is his sort of overarching control of the whole creation, the whole universe, and every living being. And then each individual cow, each individual jiva also has this short rope, which Krishna is controlling. So he has his universal control, and he's also within our heart, as Prabhupada explained, as Anumanta Upajishta Anumanta. He's the overseer and the overlord of all of us individually within our personal hearts. So there's this short rope by which Krishna is controlling and directing our individual life, and the long rope by which he's controlling the whole universal situation. So in both of these contexts, we understand Krishna is the controller, Krishna is the enjoyer, and Krishna is the benefactor. Another nice description is given last week. Also, we discussed the story of Puranjana and his death, and then his next life as Puranjani, as the female, as the queen of Vidarbha, the princess of Vidarbha, and marrying the king Malayadwaj, and then Malayadwaj died. So Puranjani and Malayadwaj were brought together, and then they were separated again. And Puranjani, the queen, was crying in the forest, "Oh, I've lost my husband, we've been separated." And then the Brahmana boy came, who is the representative of the super soul, came to preach to her and explain to her, just like Narada Muni is preaching and explaining to Yudhishthira, preaching the same exact point, that Krishna brought you together by karma, Krishna separated you by karma. Prabhupada explains from that story, he writes, his instructions are important. This is the instructions of the Brahmana who represents Super Soul, preaching to Puranjani. His instructions are important because by them, the living entity can obtain liberation from bodily engagement. As water passes down a river, many straws and grasses are carried from the shore. These straws and grasses come together in the river's current, but when the waves toss this way and that, they are separated and carried somewhere else. Similarly, the innumerable living entities within this material world are being carried by the waves of material nature. Sometimes the waves bring them together and they form friendships and relate to one another on a bodily basis of family, community, or nationality. Eventually, they're thrown out of the association by the waves of material nature. This process has been going on since the creation of material nature. So this is material life. We're brought together by these waves, like twigs and leaves in the river, brought together in a bunch, and then the waves change, the current changes, separated, smashed apart. There's one story when Prabhupada was either staying or visiting with John Lennon and his wife Yoko Ono. and he was doing some preaching to them. And the story I heard from, I think from His Grace Dhananjaya Prabhu told me that one day they came down to Prabhupada and accepting him as some kind of spiritual person or some kind of person with powers, with mystic powers. They begged him, oh, we love each other so much. Can you, by your mystic power, ensure that in our next life after we die, that we two, John Lennon and Yoko Ono, can come together and be husband and wife again? And Prabhupada was so disgusted by this request, because this is completely contrary to this principle of accepting how we're brought together and we're swept apart by the will of the Lord, by the pleasure of the Lord, and also for our own benefit. So this is the philosophy that Narada Muni is preaching to Yudhishthira. Let's see what time it is. So separation in this material world is unavoidable. The lamentation that goes with it is also natural and nearly unavoidable. But these kind of instructions help us to remain sane, help us to remain equipoised, and help us to go on with our duty, both our material duties and even more importantly, our spiritual duties. So this is the purpose of philosophy. Narada Muni's he's preaching philosophy. He's not just, patting him on the back and saying, oh, it'll be okay, or giving some platitudes or some kind words. Now, kind words and a pat on the back or a hug or some comforting words when you're grieving, I'm not speaking against that. That's a very good thing. And that's a very important thing to know how to apply properly also. But if it doesn't have the basis of philosophy, then it may not actually be that helpful. So therefore, Narada Muni is speaking this, and this is the purpose of philosophy. Philosophy has many purposes. One purpose of philosophy, this is discussed by a material, mundane philosopher, fairly famous person, Isaiah Berlin, a famous philosopher and historian. He said about philosophy that philosophy is to assist men to understand themselves and thus operate in the open and not wildly in the dark. So without a philosophical basis, we can't understand ourselves and we can't understand how to act properly in this world. Therefore, philosophy is so important. Proper philosophy, deep understanding and realization of philosophy, so important. Why? Philosophy, the word literally, the etymology, philosophy, philo means love, and sophy means knowledge or wisdom. So philosophy means to have a love of wisdom, a love of knowledge, and a love of truth. So philosophy is important because most people will accept that it's always better to be situated in truth and in knowledge than it is to be situated in illusion or ignorance or to be living a lie. So philosophy is important for that because we want to understand the world and ourselves actually as we are, not in some idealized or theoretical or illusory state. We want to understand things as they are. Philosophy is also important because it gives us comfort in hard times, just like Yudhishthira is getting comfort. He was brought to hear philosophy when he was lamenting. He was brought to hear philosophy from Bhishma Dev, and it soothed his heart. And now he's lamenting again, and now the philosophy preached by Narada Muni is also soothing his heart. So we gain comfort. When we experience some loss in life, this philosophy can comfort us that it's due to my karma. Krishna's giving it to me personally, and he's doing it for my benefit, to actually help me, to bring me out of suffering, to bring me out of the entanglement of material life. So this can be a great comfort to someone who's in a suffering condition of life. So philosophy, it gives us knowledge, it brings us to reality, it gives us comfort in hard times. Philosophy is also important because it helps to keep us determined and helps to keep us on the right path and keep us doing our duties and acting properly. Just like philosophy comforts us when we're suffering, sometimes the opposite can happen, that we can be enjoying so much by karma as given by Krishna. We may get $1 billion, and then without philosophy, if we have all that money, we'll enjoy like anything. We'll have, if you have $1 billion, getting sex and getting a sex partner and a mate is so easy. If you have $1 billion, and getting everyone to respect you and bow down to you and kowtow and offer you respect is so easy when you have $1 billion. And thinking yourself to be the greatest there is when you have $1 billion is so easy. And all of that can interfere so much with a proper life of, what to speak of spiritual life, even a life of ordinary material morality and goodness can become very difficult for a person in such a condition. But if you have that philosophy, just like if you're comforted by philosophy when things are bad, you can also, your irrational exuberance for material life during good times can also be reined in and put into perspective and controlled by philosophy, allowing us to continue to perform our duties of morality and our duties of Krishna conscious, even when the temptations and the opportunity of material enjoyment is there. So philosophy keeps us in truth and out of lies. It comforts us in hard times, and it keeps us balanced and on an even keel when times are good. And ultimately, the point of philosophy, as is the point of everything, is prema pamartha mahan. By this understanding of philosophy, by understanding the world and ourselves as it is, by not being swept away by suffering, and also not being swept away by material enjoyment, then we could behave in a proper way. When you understand that, you can engage in the process of devotional service very powerfully and very sincerely and very effectively, and actually come to the conclusion of loving Krishna. Loving Krishna, why? Because Krishna is the supreme enjoyer of everything. Krishna is the supreme controller of everything, and he's the supreme benefactor for each and every one of us. So that makes him, all of those qualities make him the most lovable person. So philosophy has to have this conclusion, that it brings us to the point of loving or aspiring, trying, advancing on the path of developing love for Krishna. Otherwise, just learning philosophy as a school subject is of limited value. Just memorizing shlokas is, believe me, memorizing shlokas is awesome. But if you're just memorizing shlokas, of limited value, or you just understand philosophy in a theoretical way, of limited value. It has to be applied and understood as the means, as the guidebook by which we understand Krishna and serve Krishna and approach Krishna in love. Therefore, we read Srila Prabhupada's books, we learn shlokas, we study shlokas, we learn philosophy. We have morning classes to speak and understand and inquire about philosophy. We have Sunday feast lecture to convey philosophy, just like Vishnu Kadaprabhu very nicely has, like doing 6th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. That means that we can assume that there's a coherent, worthwhile philosophy in the 6th chapter of Bhagavad Gita that's worth hearing about and worth diving into and studying deeply. Prabhupada used the expression study threadbare, that we should study this philosophy threadbare. Just like if you have a rug or a tapestry and you're examining and pulling it apart, you're doing it threadbare, that you're not just looking at the pattern, but you're pulling it apart and looking at each detail down to the individual threads of the tapestry. So study it threadbare in all detail, understanding very deeply. The other example given is the example of fluffing out cotton. This example is given by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. That just like if you have a lump of compressed cotton and you take that compressed cotton and you start fluffing it out and separating it out and pulling apart the strands and the threads. So the same way when we read a verse, this is what we do when we're giving class. We have this verse. As a player sets up and disperses his playthings according to his own sweet will, so the supreme will of the Lord brings men together and separates them. And the purpose of the class, to whatever meager extent I'm willing to do it or able to do it with my limited abilities, take that verse and pull it apart and look at it and examine it. What does it mean? What is trying to be conveyed? What is Prabhupada trying to convey in the purport? What is the application to our own life? So this is philosophy. This is why philosophy is important. Prabhupada said, so Srimad Bhagavatam, everything is explained threadbare, discussed, very practical, and the absolute truth. There is social, political, religious, everything is discussed very scientifically. So this is what we want. We study philosophy deeply. But why? For what purpose? To engage in devotional service, to understand our own nature as spirit soul, Jiver Swarupai Krishna Nityadas. What's the rest of it? Tatashta Shakti Vedara Prakash. I can't remember the entire verse. That we're eternal servant of Krishna, part and parcel of his energy to Tatashta Shakti. And so we understand our own nature. We can tolerate the difficulties and sufferings of material life, not be carried away by the enjoyments of material life, and fix our mind on serving Krishna, understanding Krishna, and ultimately loving Krishna. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Is there any comment or discussion?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna. Go ahead, please.
Thank you very just comment. Thank you very much for your very nice class. I really like the line that when you said karma joins us and karma separates us. And also it was, whole class was really very comforting actually to me. And we should go through very deeply with the philosophy. Otherwise, when we try to tell someone Bhagavatam is good, but unless they go deeply, they will not understand it. How can we help them? This is the question I have. If they don't get much time and don't go deeply, so they will not fully understand the meaning of it. Philosophy.
Right. A superficial any understanding and any appreciation of Vaishnava philosophy, Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, any appreciation is good. But if we want, like in anything, if you want to get the most benefit out of it for yourself, and if you want to convey the most benefit of it to others, you need to dive in deeply. Like if someone's interested in medicine. So if, learning how to put a Band-Aid on a cut, that's a good thing. But if you really want to, you really understand the benefit of medicine, you need to really study it deeply and go to college and intern and medical school and all these things. So similarly, same thing with Bhagavatam. Any appreciation is good, but the more we dive deeply into it, the more we understand, the more benefit we get, and the more benefit we can also convey to others. Just like it said about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's pastimes, maybe it was Krishnadas Kaviraj who said this, that the pastimes of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu are just like an ocean. And anyone can dive into that ocean, and the depth that they could swim in that ocean is according to their own ability. So our ability may be meager, but whatever ability we have, we should dive into these Prabhupada's books, dive into this philosophy, and achieve as much depth, literal and figurative depth as we can. Yes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Hare Krishna. Anything else? Question or discussion?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Yeah, very nice class, very nicely explained, and very important point, like Mataji was saying. I had heard an analogy a long time ago, people coming together and separating like passengers on a train.
Yes.
We get on, some people get off, some people continue on, get off at a further point. So it's hard. I have lost a few relatives in the last few years, and it has not been easy. But like you said, this philosophy does comfort us to a small degree. At least for me, it is still a small degree because I'm still lamenting. And then I don't know if you know, but my niece had a hiking accident. She's still not able to walk. And
I'm sorry.
And like you were saying, it helps because, and I keep telling my brother this, please don't become bitter, and I see him, because he's not holding on to this philosophy, there is the danger of him becoming bitter and angry.
Right.
People are wishing this upon me and, going off in that direction. But so people coming together, or our distress or happiness, is all based on our karma, but our karma is based on our decisions. So does he help us with those decisions? Because whatever I have done, for that I will have to enjoy and suffer based on what I have. And there's nothing I can do to change that. That will have to go. That is why we see good people suffering, or even devotees getting hardships. That is how I'm understanding. I don't know if that is the correct understanding or not. Yeah. And so is that why I should be making good decisions now? Because there are always choices in front of me. I could go this way. I see a lot of people taking the easy way, or what we think to be the easy way out. And I'm trying to say, no, that I will have to do what I have to do, because it doesn't matter. It's not like, it's like when you are speeding and the police stops you, and I cannot use the logic, everybody is speeding, so I'm speeding, and he's going to say, yeah, but I caught you, and so I'm going to give you the ticket. Is that a right way to look at it?
Yes, it is. But on the other hand, like I quoted, Na yasya karhi chidrajan puman vedaviditsitan, we can't really understand Krishna's plan. And I'm not going to pretend to understand how Krishna's will and my minute free will, where one ends and the other picks up, and how they interact. That's very difficult or impossible to understand. But we have some will, to whatever degree it is. And at the same time, we have this hope, or this trust in Krishna's munificence to us, that he's also our well-wisher. So we accept karma, that it's going to happen. We're going to get what we deserve. And we also understand that Krishna is so well-wisher and also so intelligent that he doesn't have to make a miracle and, wipe out our karma. He can arrange our karma so perfectly that it's actually for our benefit. So we have to have a little trust in that, a little faith in that, and at the same time, taking our own degree of responsibility. Krishna, being the absolute supreme controller, doesn't absolve us of responsibility. We're also part and parcel of Krishna. So to whatever part and parcel of degree we have some control, some responsibilities, some free will. So we need to, whatever degree we have of that, we need to get our mind straight in Krishna consciousness, get our duties and our life and our behavior and our family and our relations straight in line with Krishna consciousness, and trust that Krishna will arrange things very nicely for us. he may or may not completely wipe out our karma. As far as what's the verse, Kshipram Bhavati Dharma, we can expect that we'll be rectified. Krishna may or may not wipe out our karma. We shouldn't necessarily demand that of him, but we at least have to have the trust that he's arranging things for our benefit. And at the same time, maintain our proper responsibility, that it's also, to a large degree, our responsibility to, are we thinking, feeling, and willing correctly? Are we behaving properly? But the details of how they interact are way beyond me. But the point is there that they are interacting, that our free will and Krishna's control are interacting. And if we're being cooperating to create our future for us, which will be auspicious, ultimately auspicious. I don't know if that was kind of rambling, and I didn't really come to a conclusion. So I don't know if what I said really added anything to the discussion, but your point is valid. Yes.
I mean, I think these topics are like that. We go on, over the years, my understanding has improved so much, but it's taking a long time.
Yeah.
And it's because there is so much to it. It is not simple. It's not, and that is why the answers are never direct and one-word answers. That
right.
It takes a lot of thinking and a lot of inward looking,
yeah,
and a lot of studying, like you were explaining, fluffing that cotton, like separating. And I am seeing how some of you, I read the verse, I read the translation, and I read the purport, and then I hear you or Vishnu Gada Prabhu or some others explaining it. And I also see how you listen to others give class and ask questions. I mean, not a word, not a punctuation is missed. And so there is just so much to learn in so many aspects. It's not just philosophy, it's how to hear, how to accept the information, how to question in a proper mood. Not to question for the sake of questioning or in arrogance, but question.
Yeah, what does Prabhupada say? In the purport, what does he say to not irrelevant questions? I'm trying to remember the exact words. Both challenging and absurd questions. I can't remember the exact words. What verse is that?
Is it 434?
434. I have a Bhagavad Gita here. I'm trying to remember the exact words Prabhupada used, and I can't, but they're worth looking up maybe. Both blind following and absurd inquiries are condemned. That was the word I was looking for. Both blind following. So blind following means superficial without diving into it. Blind following and absurd inquiries. So you don't ask, stupid questions or challenging or cynical questions. So I like that. Also, your point also reminded me of two things, especially the point about like losing friends or losing family members. Two stories. One Prabhupada told, he discussed how more than once, how in Germany during World War I, I think it was, that he said all of the women of Germany were praying to God, oh, save my husband, save my father, save my son from this war. And of course, so many of them died. And when that happened, he said so many of those people became atheists. So if you don't understand how it's the will of the Lord, if you don't have a philosophical grounding, then you could have a bad reaction to that. And another more personal story, I have a friend, a devotee, who many years ago lost one of her sons in a car accident. He died. And she told me, some years later, she told me how when that happened, she was so upset. She was actually like cursing Krishna for doing it. But eventually she, grew out of it. And, I think Krishna understood the pain of that, to lose a son. What could be more painful? That Krishna can understand that, but you have to have the grounding in philosophy so that you could eventually, gain an even keel again to some degree. And even Prabhupada explains, and Krishna explains that, to Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita, Prabhupada says that this family affection is a natural thing. So you can't just, turn it off like a switch, or you can't deny it. And nor is it even healthy to deny it. But if you don't have the basis of philosophy, then it could go off into unproductive or unhealthy directions. Okay, thank you. Anything else?
It's not.
Nope. Oh, I don't know if there's any announcements. Everyone knows that 24-hour kirtan is going on.
Yes, and it'll continue till the Sunday feast program. So everybody try and make it there for a few hours.
I haven't attended yet, but I'm hoping to spend some time during the day today.
Yeah, it was nice when it started yesterday. I was there at the very beginning. I heard Amala Kirtan for a few minutes, and then and I've been watching it off and on YouTube. So hopefully they will go back to the live streaming and you can attend that way.
Jai.
See you all in the evening then.
Okay, Hare Krishna. Thank you very much, everybody. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Panchakalpatarubhyascha kripasinubheva paditanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namah. Hare Krishna. Everybody have a great day.
Hare Krishna.